Welcome back, everybody. It's going to be another great day today. Today, we're talking about spirituality, and not in the sense of, keeping it vague and just, us as sentient beings. We want to get specific, and I'm sure we're going to ruffle some feathers today because we have a Christian reverend who is a believer and an experiencer who's not scared to say that religion may not have all the answers. And I don't know about you, Jay, but I think that's a pretty difficult thing to say as an
It's a
ordained
huge
minister.
move. It's a huge move. You don't see that very often. I know that John Mack and Bud Hopkins said that people from all walks in life, have these experiences. We've had people on the podcast that were super religious and have had these experiences as well. So hearing it from, a reverend that is such a cool guy, and I'm looking forward to this interview very much.
Yeah, and I think we all have kind of little grasps of stuff. Like we understand a little bit of consciousness and spirituality, and we kind of think aliens are real and UFOs. But how do you make sense of all of that? We really need, our brain wants to rank and file everything. So I know, at least for myself and a lot of other people, we're on this quest to try to learn more and really make sense of it. And how do you reconcile that with your faith or with what you've been taught your entire life? So we're going to ask them some very specific questions. We're going to talk about multiple religions around the world, doctrine, accuracies, fallacies. It's going to be a different kind of show, but I think a show that is overdue. And with a character like Michael, I don't say anybody's not going to love him. I know we do. And I'm ready to bring him on. So we'll be right back. We're going to run our intro music, and we're going to bring on Reverend Michael Carter right after this.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Mr. Jason Gilmet. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. The Reverend's in the house today, so we're gonna
Absolutely.
have some fun.
The Reverend is here.
Hey y'all.
And we're probably gonna ruffle some feathers today because we're gonna talk about a topic that a lot of people are really polarized on. Whether you're a believer of God, quote unquote, very religious, spiritual, agnostic, whatever you define your faith as, there are implications when it comes to this whole ET phenomenon. And today's guest knows more about that than anybody we've ever spoken to. He's author of several books, including Alien Scriptures. He's appeared on television programs like Ancient Aliens, multiple seasons. He is an ordained minister and legit reverend, a multiple ET experiencer himself. It doesn't get any more qualified than that. So with a warm welcome, Mr. Reverend Michael Carter. Welcome to the show.
Hey y'all.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me. You know what? I should have kept my suit on. I'm just looking here. I mean, I had service today, so I came home and I just took it off. You guys look great. I know you had something on, but how do you like us in our suit and ties? It's classy.
Yeah,
Nice.
we started doing it last year, and we thought, like, we wear suits for our day jobs. This is our business attire. And one day we were just off work and did a show, and we thought, you know what, looks good. Nobody else is doing it. Some guys are wearing ripped T-shirts and jeans and stuff. So let's take it seriously.
Yeah. If we take ourselves seriously, other people take us seriously. That's what it is, right?
What a concept.
Exactly.
So we want to get to know you in terms of your life, your experiences, and what eventually, kind of sparked that fire to really become a man of God and help other people understand God themselves. So tell us a little bit about your experiences growing up and what got you on the path.
Thank you. And again, thanks for having me on, guys. I've been looking forward to it. I was raised in the African-American Baptist tradition. And so that's where I was raised, and I remember, just studying, and I could give you Bible quotes, but Matthew was my favorite book. And part of that, guys, was, as a kid, you want to please your parents, but I don't know whether it was a past life thing or whatever, but I'm always comfortable in houses of worship. Now, I couldn't articulate that as a kid. And so I remember, I got baptized on Easter Sunday, 1980 at Trinity Baptist Church. And, I did the things that one does. I was visiting Catholic churches and other churches. There was a girl I had a crush on when I was a teenager. She went to St. Ambrose Catholic Church, and so did I, because I just wanted to see her. So I did those things, and my parents are still, steeped in that tradition. They're elderly. I would not even look at, I just didn't believe in UFOs. And I said, why? Because they weren't in the Bible. And so that's kind of my background. It's not now. I'm 360 away from that. And part of that was because of my experiences. But, I wear many hats. I try to be, grounded. I mean, I got well, she'll be 17 next month. I got a daughter. I just got married again
Good for you.
in November. We bought
Congratulations.
a house. So you don't want to be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Thoreau reminds us. So you got to get up in the morning, pay the bills, go to work. I had my first encounter that I knew of as an adult. Now looking back, Kierkegaard, one of my favorite philosophers, says life is lived forward, but it's only understood backwards. And looking back when I was a child, I could say, oh my God, I was having visits then. But July, I'm sorry, December 28th, 1989 was when I first had no doubt that I was being visited by the people look like this. I don't know if you can see it. Or
Okay,
should I come closer?
yeah, for those who are listening to the podcast and can't see the visuals, it
It's
looks
it's a
like a
gray
gray.
person
Yeah.
with the big pear-shaped head. And let me put him here. They weren't dressed like that. They had on like a jumpsuit. I had this artist put a Buddha robe on it because that's what I want. But December 28th, 1989, I was coming back from the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum. And I want to preference this with, guys, once I started moving away from the Baptist tradition, I was starting to reading existential philosophers. I was starting to read about auras and tarot cards. I was broadening my scope. Now, my more conservative friends will probably say, "Well, that's the devil. You would do," but I don't look at it that way. So I was just reading and studying. I was going to, Unity Church, metaphysics, science of mind. I was exploring. I was broadening my horizons. December 28, 1989, I was living in New York. I was an actor there. I lived there for 28 years, 27 years. And we came home. We got off at JFK. My girlfriend at the time uh, said, I'm going to stay home. It was freezing. And we just come back from 85 degrees. I kind of wanted to show off a little bit, show the picture. I just wanted to hang out. So I went down to Hell's Kitchen in Times Square. That's where this gathering was. And, just kind of hung out. I was nice and copper, and the hair was lighter, and
You were
I
looking
didn't have I didn't
good.
have I didn't have dreadlocks then, but and so we talked. No adult beverages were served, none. But I'm a deviled egg freak, so I just ate. I stuffed myself, and then I went back home, caught the subway back to the Upper West Side, and like I said, to this day, I don't know whether I had to get up to go to the bathroom. I don't know, but I just felt a presence in the room, and I sleep on my stomach. And when I turned around, this guy was there, about 4 feet tall. No, it couldn't have been taller. Couldn't have. I mean, like a little person, and had on a jumpsuit that looked. It was like not like a turtleneck. It was just one piece, um, and it was like Reynolds wrap. It looked like aluminum foil that he had on. My girlfriend Sandy did not budge. She was like out. And this guy looked at me. It could have been a woman, but I'm going to say guy. I don't want to offend anybody, but and there around him at the foot of my bed was a blue light, like a lapis cobalt blue. And then around that was just like my apartment was lit up like Times Square. I have never been so scared in my life. And I've been in some scary situations. I had a cop put a gun up to my head when I was 17 years old. And I'm going to tell you, you talk about meditation, you want to talk about things coming alive. I was like, whoa, colors were brighter. It was weird, but that was fear. But this was it was an existential fear because he didn't look like, a human being. I pulled the covers up over my head and got into the fetal position. I didn't do that with the cop. And
Right.
so, I mean, we were outside. But anyway, and I heard this, and it was like the wind was in my apartment. Sandy's still out, and then it felt like I was outside. And this was at the Excelsior Hotel. It's a residential hotel. It's still there, 45 West 81st Street, between Central Park West and Columbus Avenue. And I was like freezing all of a sudden, and my mind is trying to compartmentalize and deal with all this stuff. I finally grew a pair, and I pulled the covers down. No one was there. Sandy wakes up. I tell her what happened. She was freaked out, not because of what I told her, but because of me. I mean, I was shaking. I was so scared. And so, she hung in there with me those many years. I mean, we later got divorced and separated, but not because of that. It was life circumstances. And so that was my first kind of contact where I could see them.
And Michael,
Yes, sir.
how many floors up were you in this hotel?
Well, at that time, it had 15 floors.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's not like Betty and Barney Hill where you're on this rural road.
Yeah, because Bud
And,
Hopkins had that case too about that lady in
yep.
New York, the Brooklyn Bridge incident,
But
right?
Bud and I were very friendly. We just saw Bud regressed me. We just saw the thing. We just saw it from a different way. Because I'll get into it with my brother, but I was getting visits twice a month for about 8 months, maybe almost a year, and they would come on a full moon and a new moon. It got to be like clockwork, and they would paralyze me. They being the little short people, because I've seen other races, and we can talk about that. And they wouldn't talk. They would show me pictures here in my third eye, but they would always paralyze me. I don't know whether it was their protection or for mine. They showed me a past life where I was a monk. Okay, so this whole religion thing, I see why it comes easy to me, because I've been doing it for years. They showed me a picture of a future event that did happen. I was speaking at this big church, man, and I had this three-piece suit on that I later wound up getting. I mean, it was eerie. But at that time, I started. I went to a therapist. I wasn't sleeping. I still have a little trauma. It's hard for me to go to sleep sometime at night, and especially like my wife's going out of town tomorrow for a couple of days. Sometimes it's hard for me to sleep by myself. But I want to be clear, not because they've hurt me, but because they could just pop up. They can just walk in the wall. I could be looking here and turn around, and they're there. That gets your heart going.
I bet.
Yeah. But now I'm studying all these different religious paths, these existential philosophers, those type of things. And it took me a long time to let go of the Baptist tradition. I was trying to put a round peg in a square hole, but I started to see Jesus differently. Then I run into uh, a friend of mine, but we weren't friends then. We didn't know each other, Dr. Barry Downing. Wrote a book back in 1968 called The Bible and Flying Saucers. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a retired Presbyterian minister. He's not an experiencer. And then when I found Barry's book, I said, oh my God. Because the way I'm wired is I'm not into propulsion systems and back engineering. Greater minds than I can do that. I want to know, how does it change you once you look one of these brothers and sisters in their eyes? You are changed. And so Barry wrote this book. And I started looking at the Bible really differently. And then I started, Morris K. Jessup wrote a book, Bible and UFOs in the Bible, died under mysterious circumstances in the 50s. Virginia Brasington, right here from North Carolina, wrote a book called UFOs in the Bible back in the 50s. And, there are a couple other ministers who wrote about this. Morris K. Jessup was the minister. And it was like water to a parched man in the desert, because I had a reference point, because that's how I view the world. And so I was looking at the Old Testament and the New Testament and Jesus, and I started reading it, and I said, and Barry was the template, and I said, if you put the word, wherever you see the word angel in the Bible or the Quran, and you put star person, I don't like the word alien, but whatever floats your boat, it makes so much more sense. And then I started putting together, well, wait a minute. For instance, Passover. There's no Jewish religion until after the Exodus. There's no Jewish religion. Before, it's just a ragtag group of folks. Pharaoh is not a nice person, and he's carrying on, and he won't let them go. And it was scary because Yahweh, I look at Yahweh as an astronaut who with anger management problems. He's too obsessed with circumcision and interracial marriages. What kind of God cares about that? And you're going into people's throwing babies up against the wall, that kind of thing. But it took me a while to get that and then to sit with that. One could argue that Jesus is talking about a whole different, when he talks about his father, one could argue he's talking about a whole different intelligence than Yahweh, even though Yahweh does mellow out as the years go by. And I'm still having these experiences. I still have them now, just sometimes years in between. And so it opened up a whole new world for me. And when people call me, and it's obviously because I'm a minister, I went to a seminary trained. They're not so much worried about what their parents and friends will think, even though they are. But the first thing they say to me, can I still be religious and believe in UFOs? It's almost like you help me. You gotta wrap your mind around. Now, I say yes, but I also say it's going to change you. It changed the way I looked at Christianity. It changed the way, I was trying to find, I used to say, I'm not a Christian. I'm a follower of the teachings of Jesus. And to my friends, I'm not a Christian because I don't go into the doctrinal stuff so much. I'm in that way, the theology. But if you're trying to find these teachings, because Jesus wasn't a Christian, obviously he was a Jewish man, then you kind of broaden what that means. And so you got to be able to be comfortable with that.
And let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about, ET references, not only in Christian scriptures, but in, 4,000-year-old Hindu texts have depictions of craft flying around shooting each other. So this is nothing new. We all kind of know that the ancients had a relationship with God, or in some cases what they thought was God. Maybe it was ET or whatever. But let's talk a little bit about that specifically, like within the Bible and other ancient doctrines. There's a lot of talk about ETs and craft and everything else. And so where do you kind of make sense of the whole, this is the language they used thousands of years ago to describe something phenomenal? The angel implication, even the demon implication, poltergeist, it's all like a salad that's being tossed. How do you make sense of all that?
I think you make sense of it by just you have to be uncomfortable with mystery, and you have to be able to say, I don't know. If we look at the Hindu scriptures, the Mahabharata, the Upanishads, if we look at that, they're talking about vimanas, flying craft, and they're talking about the battles that are being fought. These are dogfights. And so, and Krishna's blue. Reminds me of what Arcturians, Edgar Casey talks about them in his writings. But so we say, that's 5,000 years ago. So it's not a new relationship. Even if you look at the books taken out of the Bible, like Enoch, you know, and he kind of goes on and riffs on Genesis 6, talking about, he expands on that, talking about the names of these so-called fallen angels. I think they're extraterrestrials, and you know, they mate with earth women, and they create this race of giants, which you find some of that in the Old Testament as well. And it's always these Native American spirituality, with the star people. They're bringing civilization. Well, that's not really the word. They're bringing wisdom and and a more humane way of dealing on the planet. They're coming from the sky, whether it's Ezekiel's wheel, whether it's Elijah and the flying chariots, whether it's the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. And you said it, Louis, they're using the vernacular of their time. And these beings would be godlike because of the technology. To me, that's not to say that there's no single source or God or force or whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying that doesn't exist at all. I'm saying, but we create in our own image, and that we anthropomorphize this God. And any God you can create, any God that you is really not God, because the finite can never comprehend the infinite.
Yeah.
Now, maybe when we're not in these bodies and we're just pure spirit, and that's something else. But the thing about God is that, at least here on earth, everybody's made God in their own image. You know, God doesn't like the same things I don't like.
Right.
You know,
Or
if
he's
I
a
don't
man
like
on a
you, yeah,
cloud, you know, casting judgment and condemning
yeah,
people to hell. He's the
exactly.
Yahweh God. He's very vindictive, and it's
Yeah,
almost like the Sumerian gods and their epics, where
he's a
you know
war god.
they're enslaving us and the
Yes,
Nephilim and breeding with people and making us mine
Anunnaki,
gold. You know,
so he's a warrior god, and so, and he's very jealous, and you know, he's got these traits that he needs to look at, if you will.
But they're human traits. That's the thing that I always find funny with the gods, is that they have human traits. They get
And see,
angry, they get
yes,
jealous, you
human
know, like it's,
flaws.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
yeah, well, they get horny, they will eat, they will, and even in the Greek pantheon of gods. But see, that's, I think that's very crucial what you said, because a lot of these beings are more spiritually advanced, and some of them aren't, and some of them are in process. This intelligence, this entity that you could use the word God or whatever you want to call it, that's very different from what we're reading in the Bible, what we're reading in some of these sacred scriptures. And so that right there is enough to get people going, because you've been taught this way for so long. And now you got quantum physics telling us about energy, about different dimensions. And so as we move into this time, it's an eye-opening time. And if you don't have a center, or you're not working on it, and then you can do that in many ways, but you're going to be tossed around like a bottle in the sea, because there's all this information coming at us from the government, from other people, from what's just going on in the world, and you'll be ripe for anything.
So based on that, and based on, like, we'll come back with some of your experiences that you've had, but
Mm-hmm.
with the church being what it is now, which is this big decline I would say
Yes,
attendees or
it's
people
true.
being brought to
Yes.
the church right now in North America, you got the government that's coming out and saying, yeah, these UAPs are real. We're trying to study them. We don't know. That is a huge pill to take for somebody who's already built, you know, their box, and says, no, no,
Yes.
this is what reality is, where in fact they're not really living or accepting what reality is, because this is part of nature. If we're being visited, or you know, an overlord species is, you know, overlooking us or whatever, it's part of nature, right? If they're there, they just beat us to the punch. But not accepting that, like being you know, cocooned in your religion, is a big problem. And I come from a religious background. I'm no longer religious. I'm no longer spiritual, if you would say.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
some
Me too.
people
Me too.
are, and that's the issue. Is like I'm worried about how do we approach that with them, because I have family that are still very gripping to the
Yes,
idea that
me too.
the Christianity, and just trying to say, look, these are real, has nothing to do with your your faith, your belief, doesn't change anything, doesn't take away from it, but we need to address it with the people that don't want to look at it, right?
Well, I that's a great question. I think there are many layers to it. I don't know. First of all, coming from the religious background that you and I have come from, and probably Louis, we can be bilingual because many people speak the language that we used to speak. God, or healing. We may say energy, whatever, but we know what. And I think it's important to say when you say God and I say God, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. That's number one. But I would say, Jason, that number two is you can plant the seed, but if people aren't ready to hear it, I mean, even Jesus, there was, he basically he was trying to meet people at their map of the world. He had parables and stories that he would tell in public, and then in private with his disciples, he would give them the real meaning because he knew you could not force these things on people because people are at different stages of their development,
Right.
you know? And so for me, for instance, my sister is evangelical. We love each other to death, but she cannot deal with the work that I do because, like, I do energy work. I started out doing Reiki, but now that's changed a bit because of my experiences. The energy is different that comes out of my hands. But she says, well, you don't mention Jesus when you talk about that. So there's nothing I can do to and she'll say, well, the other day I said to her, well, then look, you love me, you know me, I'm your brother. Look at the work I do. I'm not harming people, I'm helping people. But that's still not good enough. Well, how do you know that's not the devil? It reminds me of Hamlet, right? When he says to Horatio, the spirit I've seen may be the devil, and the devil has power to assume a pleasing shape. So some people are just not ready to hear it, and I let it go with that because what's the parable? Some seed will go on ground that is fertile. Some seed will go on ground and it will be choked. So I kind of just roll. If someone seems open to it, I will talk about it. Listen, I almost got fired. Someone tried to get me fired from my church years ago because they saw me on Ancient Aliens, and they said, well, I don't want my minister talking about little green men. But luckily, in the denomination I'm in, the Unitarian Universalist, the board runs the church, not the minister. I work for the board. And so she was a big donor. She complained to the board, and the board said, he's not forcing it down your throat. He's not preaching it here. In other words, this is not a UFO church. And so what's the harm? And he may be right. So I think it's a situational kind of thing because you don't want to force stuff on people. And eventually things will play out where they'll have to make a decision. I would like to be there if I can as a guide. People come to me for counseling, that kind of thing. But I would never force that on people because it's a game changer. Because it basically everything we've been taught has been a lie.
Yeah. And not to mention the people within the church or any other religion in the world are also experiencers as well. We've interviewed people that, have written books about people that are in the church that are experiencing, abduction cases, for crying out loud. And they're looking at it more like, is it a devil thing? Am I being punished by hell? Like they
Yes.
can't make sense of it because they don't have, let's say, a reverend like you who've had these experiences and could say, well,
Yes.
actually, it might be this. Let's look at it on this hand. Everything has got to be, well, yeah, it's probably a spiritual attack.
Yeah.
Like you need to pray
It's
more. It's like,
fear-based.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
very fearful.
Yeah.
You look in the Bible, I mean, Elijah is a contactee. And he gets taken up in the chariot. So is Paul. He's a contactee. Obviously, I think Jesus was. You know, you look in the Bible; these are contactees. You look at John the Baptist, his mother. You know, and Elizabeth, and you know, they're meeting these beings. They're calling them angels, and there's usually a message. Okay, and what do they say? So that don't be afraid.
It's at
You found
night.
favor with the Lord. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you know? And I want to be clear. The Bible has a beauty to it and lots of wisdom and a prose to it. I'm not just saying. I don't want to. I'm not denigrating it. I still use it. I draw wisdom from it, but I draw wisdom from other sources as well. I don't think you throw out the baby with the bathwater, and a lot of people have, because religion has taught us fear. The only reason these people are saying, "Well, is it a devil? Is it a devil?" Because the church has said, "Well, if you don't look at it this way, you're demonic,"
Right.
Yeah.
and we got to reverse that in some ways. Um, and you reverse it by learning to love. Number one, um, that's what it's all about. Um, you don't need a reptilian, or you don't need a praying mantis person. You don't need a Nordic person to teach you that. I know people, or NPEs or OBEs, they may accelerate the process. I know a guy who had a mystical experience. He was jogging in San Francisco at sunrise. And he said, I can't explain it, but I forgot. It was like I wasn't here anymore. And I felt connected to everything, to the trees, to the mountains, to other people. I felt such love. Now, he couldn't sustain that. That went away. But once you've had an experience like that, whether it's ET or jogging or meditating, look, the Hindus do the tantric sex. You can have an orgasm that can make you have that kind of, you changed. You changed. And so it reminds me, but I'm not comparing this to war at all. I have a lot of friends who were in Vietnam, and you know, you're 18, 19, you know, people shooting at you, and you know, once you've been there and then you come back, you have to say, now how am I gonna live now? I've seen the worst that people can do to one another, or maybe I've done that. And those are the transformational experiences that we need to grow. And hopefully they can be a pathway to learning to love.
Yeah. Well said. And I think sometimes religion gives God, like quote unquote God, a bad name. And let's be honest,
Yeah,
religion is a
yeah,
man-made construct. Jesus
yes,
himself said, do not build a church, do not worship idols. Your relationship with God is you and the creator. So it's man's feeble attempt in all scripture to try to, you know, record what God's words are. And
yeah,
we are limited by our vessel, right? We are
exactly.
can't comprehend God. So we do our best to write stories that, I remember at the time of the Bible, nobody's literate other than the high priests and
Yes,
the kings and
yes,
everybody else.
yes,
Like people
yes,
believed what they saw and what they were told. And the whole idea of parables is you make a story that imparts some greater meaning at the end of the story. Whether a story is real or not, who
yeah,
cares? If you
yeah,
got the lesson, good enough. And I think
yeah,
that's basically the purpose of scripture. Give you examples of how you should live and how you should think more like the creator. And myself, as Jason said, like I was raised in a Catholic household. I went to Catholic school, had all the sacraments. I never had a bad experience with Catholicism. I know some people
mm-hmm.
have, but for me, it was the starter of understanding God. You read the
Yes,
scripture, it's philosophy that you now have to battle in your own mind and say, well, what does that mean? And in terms of God being a vengeful God or, you know, sending you to hell, maybe I'm a bad Catholic, but I don't believe in hell. The kind of
me
God
either.
I believe in only knows about love and
Yes,
creating and would not create you to suffer. And
that's right.
again, how do you explain sickos and pedophiles that deserve to burn in hell, quote unquote? I don't have an answer for that either, but
No, I don't either, and
I
I don't
think
need to.
yeah, and
Yeah,
God is
I don't
getting
need to.
lost in the man-made rules of look at the Christian faith. How many denominations of Jesus believing people are there? You have Catholics, you have Protestants, you have Baptists, you have Unitarian, Presbyterian, I mean, Pentecostal, evangelical, it goes on and on and on and on. Even the Jehovah's Witness believe in Jesus. And like, do you believe or not? Let's not get caught up in my God is better than your God, because
Mhm.
people have been killing each other for thousands of years over whose
Yes.
definition of God is
Yes.
right.
That's
And they're
right.
all wrong. So,
That's right.
you know, if you get too rigid in a book that didn't have the language at the time it was written to really
Yeah.
impart where we're at now,
Yes.
doesn't mean
Yes.
you rule out everything else, you know?
No, I agree. And the thing is, and I say this, guys, and it upsets some people because some people, I know what you believe by how you treat me. That tells me how you treat the planet, how you treat the animal kingdom. That's what I know. And even Yeshua said that by their fruits you shall know them. I know people who go to church, Bible study on Wednesday night. They're in the church, they're in the synagogue, they're in the mosque on Fridays, and they will treat you like you are something that they stepped on the sidewalk. But yet they're doing the outward thing.
Yeah.
But it comes back to, and I'm not talking about being judgmental. People have bad days. I have bad days. But basically, you know how people live. And that shows you, I live in a country that says it's a Christian nation. My God, if
Yeah.
that's Christian, then save me from it because we've gone crazy here.
Yeah.
We've
And
gone crazy here.
there are some Bible thumping people that are flag waving Christians, and if you step foot on their property, they will shoot you in the head and not think twice about it, you know? So
Twice.
gun comes before the God sometimes. And I think we really need to step back and get a 10,000-foot look at what we're
Yes.
actually doing, because every doctrine, and this is my own personal opinion, but every religion, every doctrine, it's the same story. Nobody's allowed, nobody says you can commit murder or adultery or
Yes.
theft, or you shouldn't
Yes.
respect your parents. They all say
Yes.
the same thing. They've had
Yes.
different messengers over thousands of years to approach different
Yeah.
populations of people. They
Yeah.
all say the same thing. You were created with love. God actually cares, whatever God is or looks like,
Yeah.
whether it's light or energy, who knows? We can't figure that out. But
That's
we
right.
are important enough that God gives a damn. And
Yes.
in order to prove that you give a damn back, you should live a certain way, like God would want you to
Yeah.
live. And
Yeah.
we've just complicated it to hell after that. And now we have people killing each other over whose definition of God is correct. It's totally
Yes.
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And so the best thing that we can do, I think, is to keep in front of us the things we can control and the things we can't control. I mean, my government is doing a lot of things that I don't think is right. I vote. Um, I will write so and so and go, hey man, what are you doing? But basically, my life will be, my testament. And so that's what I do. I don't worry about things I can't control. I try to be an informed citizen. I always have gratitude. I count my blessings. I got a family here. I try not to let the things I want make me forget the things that I have. And, you know, I don't know if you ever saw that meme on Facebook with William Shatner. He's dressed, he's doing his Star Trek thing. And he goes, what would God need with a starship?
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is, so I just say all that to say is that a lot of times the problems of the world are so many and so varied that it's easily to get overwhelmed. What's the use? Nothing I do matters. And that's not true. And you do what you can and you let the universe take care of the rest. Just doing that, you are raising the frequency of the planet because you're taking care of your business.
Mhm.
No one's called me to go talk to Putin or go talk to Biden, and probably no one will. But, when I go out of here every day, I try to be the best me that I can be. To be compassionate, to be kind, to be loving. Believe me, everybody's not going to be Dr. King or Joan of Arc or what have you. If you're called to do that, then by all means do it. But it's just the everyday things we can do to make people believe that they are significant.
It's like the 11th
And
commandment should have been, don't be a dick. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
right,
Just, yeah, that should have been the last one. Just be good, you know? Like,
yes,
BBAA, don't be an asshole.
right.
I think that was from
Now the
Friends
11th
or something.
commandment is, now it's thou shalt not get caught.
yeah.
You can do whatever you want,
Yeah.
just don't get caught. You know,
Yeah.
it's a mess.
Yeah.
But they're good people like you, and I'm very serious. This is a ministry. You are raising people's vibration. You are bringing them a message, and hopefully they will walk away from this thinking, feeling, and going on. I mean, this is sacred time, and it's not going to be on Fox. It's not going to be on MSNBC, but I remember that James Baldwin, the late writer, said, "The world turns by the love of a very few people." And so you just keep doing what you're doing. And little by little, it's like a ripple effect. You're bringing people knowledge, you're stretching them. Of course, you're making them uncomfortable, but that's how we grow. If they don't like it, they'll see your next guest next week. You know, they'll see
No,
Steve.
I'm sure we will get
Yeah,
comments on today's episode.
yeah.
Every time we talk about consciousness, some
Mhm.
people lose their mind. Every time we get into the realm of God or understanding, because we were nuts and bolts UFO guys doing this as just a fun hobby. People really started to like it, and we thought, well, we're going to be true to ourselves and stay fact-based. It's the hardest thing in the world to find facts and evidence on the UFO topic. All you can do is get little fading glimpses and try to connect the dots using scripture, speaking to people that are educated, better spoken than us. And some people give us a hard time and say, you know, somebody made a outlandish claim. Why didn't you hammer them for proof? It's not our business or our job to get your kind of proof. You
Yeah.
make your own decision. You think the
Yeah,
person's nuts? That's your opinion. You're going to form one
yeah,
anyway. We have our
yeah,
own,
yeah.
but it's
And
not about us. It's the
yeah,
message.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Listen, and Preston's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
You know, Preston even says in his books, "I'm not trying to prove this wrong or right. I'm telling you what this person said to me, and you take it or not."
Yeah.
You know, and yes, and see, and the thing is this: this community, for lack of a better word, the UFO community. It's that's all. I don't even know what the hell that is, but it's because people want to belong. There's a lot of fringe people that because they want to meet, they want to be significant, they want to be special, or what they think is special, and so and then you have disinformation people. So it's hard to say, well, this is really true and this isn't. But one thing you know is true is that things are changing, that people's consciousness is changing. You know, go read Ray Hernandez's book uh, on consciousness and UFOs. I'm in that book. You don't have to buy it just because I'm in it, but it's about it, and there's scientists in it, physicists who are experiencers, and they are saying, I was this way, I was pure nuts and bolts before I had this experience, and now, you know, now I'm studying massage, I'm meditating more, you know what I mean? So there's a shift happening,
You know
and
what?
sometimes you can miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
I
I was
mean,
gonna,
disinformation
yeah.
is they give you some truth, and then they kind of wrap it up in a whole bunch of disinformation. So you don't throw the baby out the bathwater. But we've been taught not to trust ourselves. So I don't need my government to tell me that UFOs exist. It would be nice, but I don't. That's not my thing. I know what I saw. I know what's happened to me. Now, if they ever come out with this, I love it. But if they don't, I know what I saw. But we're so used to giving our power away that unless someone affirms it or confirms it, then it's not true. And you just don't want to live your life that way.
Right. Now I got a question for both of you. Louis, I kept this question. I didn't let you know that I
Oh,
was
I
going to
love
ask you this question.
questions.
I know, right? But recently, somebody, Michael Shermer, so another Michael,
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
stated that believing in aliens is like a religion, and there are some similarities.
Yes.
He says it's all imagination and speculation based on reason, logic, and argument, but we still don't have any evidence for either. And I thought that's a good point. Like, how do we prevent ufology or the belief in what's happening right now from becoming a religion? Because look at the way that we're behaving on social media. Twitter, everybody's fighting, everybody's got the answer. One guy's a messiah that will charge you $3,500 for a night out looking at UFOs. And, like it's gotten ridiculous, right? So I'll pick your brain first, Louis. Like, what do you think? Is there a danger there of ufology
Again,
becoming
too,
like
using
religion?
the term religion has those negative connotations that a lot of religionisms have affected people's belief in God. So, in the sense of making it some occult thing, it's possible that it can get into that realm. But all religion, we don't have proof. I don't have a piece of Jesus's cross. I believe the man lived. I believe the message he sent. So, yeah, the people that are looking for where is the proof and call it a religion, you're leaving out the faith part. You don't have proof of any of this. You don't have proof Jesus existed, not forensic proof. You have historical records and accounts, but there's no proof with any of it. You either believe or you don't believe. And there's no right or wrong answer. And you don't owe an explanation to anybody. You know your relationship with the divine. You're either communicating or you're not. So I don't think there's any risk of alien religions having good or bad, because it's that same putting it in a little box that comes with that statement. If you're going to be an open-minded person, you believe in everything. You become the Buddha. You believe in creation, you believe in love, you believe in support and kindness. You don't worry about your neighbor anymore. You worry about yourself. You accept the universe within you, that you're made of the same stuff, and you stop putting things in boxes and calling it this and labeling it that. So my personal opinion is the term religion is the worst connotation. And to me, nothing speaks more highly to God's creative power than the fact that there might be life elsewhere. My kind of God doesn't have limits on just humans on earth. He is omnipotent. So I don't put it in a box, and I don't put the whole UFO and alien thing in a box either, because it's not, I've said it before, it's not stranger than you think, stranger than you can think. And if we try to define it, boy, you got a big ego, because you'd be the only one to figure it out for all of us if that's the true case. Nobody
Yeah.
knows.
Right.
Don't put
Yeah.
it in a box.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That resonates with me. I would say this though, that we already have UFO religions.
Yeah, that's true.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all religions that were started by star people. I'm not saying it was intentional, but the beings that they're talking. Look, we know that stars do not float across the sky and shine lights down on mangers. If they did, the whole gravitational pull of the earth would. So, I mean, we already have it. We already have the angel Moroni talking to the Mormon. That's how Mormonism started. We already have that. We already have that. And so what we're trying to say is, at least from my point of view, is that let's look at this story, these stories, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the three monotheistic faiths, and say, what are they really trying to tell us? Not about whether virgins have babies or what have you, that's in there, but were we being visited? Were our ancestors trying to describe to us, in the nomenclature, the language of their day, the experiences they were having with otherworldly intelligences? Because we've made religions out of them.
Yeah.
We've made religions out of them already. Now, I'm being a little disingenuous, because what you're saying is, there have been UFO religions. I got books on them where you get these charismatic preachers.
Cult leaders. Yeah.
Yes, I see what that, and that's what you're really saying.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we can stop that, because people are gullible. And, you've always had that, even in biblical times. You always had these little cults. Christianity was a cult at one time. But what we can do is to work on our own spirituality, to study, like the Buddha said, don't take my word for it, go out and experience it, go out and study for yourselves. And that way, that's how we grow, because you can't lead where you haven't been. So again, to answer your question, on one level, our religions are based on contactees reports. But on what you're saying is, but I don't think there's no way you can stop that except by people wanting to be educated, encouraging them. Look, don't take Michael Carter's word for it. Go read the literature, go reread some of these stories, do the research yourself. That way, whatever conclusion you come to it on your own, not because you were hoodwinked or, someone guilted you into it. And then you can start seeing, okay, you like Louis said, you start looking at life from a higher altitude. I think that's what we can encourage, which is what your show does. Does it make people uncomfortable? Yeah. You know what? If people are writing you and they're all off kilter, that means you've done your job.
I like that.
Sometimes, yeah, it feels like that. Sometimes it's
that means because we're not all going to hold hands and sing kumbaya. But if you've done your job, how did Dr. King put it? My job is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. Those who are all set, oh, I got it all figured out, I know what it is, and then you come along with this show or whatever, and they go like, oh, holy, what? That's the job for those people who are complacent. And for those people who are in the margin saying, man, I wish I could talk to somebody about what just happened to me. I don't know. You comfort them because you have other people like me on, other people who say, I know what you went through. You're not crazy. Talk to me about it. I'm here. Here's my email. Here's my phone. Here's whatever. That's what you do. That's what you guys do.
Yeah, it's always fascinating when we talk to an experiencer, somebody who's had multiple experiences throughout their lifetime, and somebody like yourself, sir, you're humble at the same time, you're kind. We have not yet to interview somebody who's a complete a-hole that is an abductee. You know what I mean? Like, they don't seem to come for those types of people. They seem to come for the people that are open, that are spiritual, that are kind. Like, everybody we talk to happens to fall that way. They're just, really genuine people. And you happen to be one of those people. So your stories are, it makes it easier for us to understand what you're coming from. Because you are genuine, and you don't come across at all as somebody who's fibbing. You got a legit story. Now, if somebody is a religious person, I'm going to say religious or a spiritual person, they've experienced, experiences of abduction or encounters, and they're not comfortable talking about it with people of their church, what would you recommend for them to do?
I would recommend a couple of things. I would recommend, if they could, to find a support group. If not a support group, maybe some people who do some hypnosis, so you can kind of get that trauma out. You can always talk to me. I do counseling. I'm not overly expensive. We could do it via Zoom, Skype, what have you. I would also advise them to be gentle with themselves, because you get a glimpse of another dimension, but you're still living in this dimension. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have a partner. You got to get up and go to work. You know what I mean? So you got to be really gentle with yourself, and use your resources. I like to read up on stuff. I read voraciously anyway, but when I had those experiences, that's why I wrote this book for experiencers. It's called The Spiritual Transformation of the Experiencer. It tells you about the signs that let you know that maybe you were visited, what to do about that. It talks about, if you're in a relationship and maybe you're having these encounters and your partner isn't. Very, very difficult, because they don't know. And you're going through one thing. So, and I'm just thinking about those things. But just know, there's so many people out here who have had and are having your experience. So you're not alone. You just need to find the safe space where you can talk without being ridiculed. Usually the church is not the place to go.
That's an honest answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
is. Absolutely.
I hate to say it, but the church is not the place to go. But call me, pick up the book. There's help here. But be gentle with yourself, because it's the beginning of a journey. And at the end of this journey, you will be a totally different person in a lot of ways. That I promise you.
And speaking of the journey, we mentioned earlier, we've gone from nuts and bolts guys to giving everything a little bit of space because we just don't know. And we've chatted with some pretty well-informed people like George Knapp and Jacques Vallée. And, when they start talking about things like it's not just UFOs now, it's like poltergeist and orbs and all these other random energies that they didn't think were affiliated with this topic. Now it seems like there's more and more to that. So I wanted to get your opinion on how do you make sense of the whole demons and poltergeists, or even just like spirits that you can communicate with? Where does that fit into the whole ET
I
phenomenon?
think it does. You know what I've been noticing? I went to a conference in Michigan last September, and I've been invited back. And what I loved about it was that you had people there talking, you had experiencers there, you had people talking about the nuts and bolts, you had people there talking about Bigfoot. Because you see some UFO sightings where people say they see Bigfoot, or some people said I've seen Bigfoot get off of a craft. I think that all this is lumped under one thing of the paranormal, which may not be paranormal, just maybe some things we don't understand as yet. We call it supernatural, but it may not be supernatural. There may be laws of physics that we're just not really understanding. I think, and I like it because we're not at each other's throats and we're not competing. And I'm noticing that more and more, conferences, they're having speakers from the different disciplines: poltergeist, Bigfoot, ghost. I think it's all, they all have that connection of how do we, are we trying to understand something, or we're being pulled to understand something that we've resisted for so long. I like that. You've got poltergeist, you got ghost stuff in the Bible. You've got Samuel, they're channeling, and then who was it? Saul goes to bring Samuel back. Samuel's dead. He's trying to get some information from Samuel. That's channeling. That's spiritualism. It's in the Bible. It was frowned upon, but I think it was frowned upon because it wasn't understood. And you had Yahweh saying, no, don't do that. Don't you do that. So I'm hopeful, and that way we can start talking to each other instead of just saying, "What are you talking about, Bigfoot? What is he, a nut? What is she talking about? Some poltergeist?" You people, like you said, people who've had entities in their home have seen poltergeist material, poltergeist things. So I think events. So I think it's promising. MUFON. I'm not saying it's changed totally, but there's several MUFON chapters that they don't talk about. I mean, they kind of regress, but when I first heard of MUFON, it was all nuts and bolts, even though they would print some of my writings about the Bible. Then it got to be, I spoke at the large MUFON chapter out in Arizona several years ago. It was packed. And people want to talk about the spiritual. They don't want to talk about just nuts and bolts, because there's something about this is beyond lights in the sky. Now, MUFON, some chapters are going back to the hardcore nuts and bolts, but some of them are saying, no, we need to keep talking about this. So it's little baby steps and increments, but this phenomenon is about transformation. That's
Right.
it.
An
So
elevation
we
of
can,
consciousness. We keep hearing
that's
that
it.
all the time, right?
That's it. That's what this is about. It's not about just, you can get caught up into that. You can get caught up into it. Roswell happened. Yes, it happened. There's enough circumstantial evidence. If you were in a court of law that they would say this happened. So it's like an atheist who's still arguing whether virgins have babies, whether Jesus rise from the dead. That's not the question we want to be talking about now. It's old, it's tired. We want to talk about, okay, you're an atheist, I'm not. How can we get together and change this world? Okay? How can we get together and raise the vibration? We don't have to agree, but how can we do this? And we can, it's easy to get caught up in this stuff, and it keeps us divided. Keeps us divided.
The devil lies in the details, right? The minutia
Yes.
gets you
Yes.
off your game, and you
Yeah,
miss the
it gets you
forest
off
because
your
there's too
game.
many
Then
trees,
you
right?
miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
You know, people call in. What are you talking about consciousness for? What, Preston can't prove that, or whoever, doesn't have to be Preston. But okay, so okay, you got a problem with that. What about this story resonates with you? Where have you heard this before? Have you heard 5 other people say that? Are all of them lying? Can you revisit this? That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's not the burden of proof. The burden of proof is not on us. The burden of proof is to do your own research.
And
Do
where does
your
free
own
will
reading.
come into this too? Like people say, well, if aliens are really taking care of us or looking out for us, why don't they fix our ozone layer? And why don't they,
Yeah.
decontaminate our planet? And if they are connected with God or spirit, we still have free will. It's not that they couldn't interject, but it would completely remove free will. And in all of our doctrines of scripture, it tells us we have the right to choose. We can
No,
choose
yes.
God or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So they're not helping
Yeah.
us because it's our problem. It's for us to choose. And
Yeah. It's like a kid, it's like, but and I like that statement, because why don't you fix my problem for me? So I don't have to grow. I don't
exactly.
have to be accountable. I messed this up. So, but you fix it because you're God, you fix it.
Yeah.
There's no growth there. There's no growth. There's entitlement. There's you fix this. I messed it up, but you fixed it. I don't even have time for that anymore. I mean, my daughter knows better than that. My daughter's 16.
Yeah. It's like the saying, what is it? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So if somebody just does for us, we don't get the skill set to prevent it from happening. And if
Yeah.
let's say miraculously they did fix our planet, we would do some other stupid nonsense and be right back to where we are now. It's
Yes.
it's the human condition is the issue. And again, we need to connect globally, whether that's on a conscious level. But if we all raise our vibration and start with just fixing ourselves, stop worrying about your neighbor, fix you, because if everybody did that, it would be a much better place.
It would be a
Problem is
different
not
world.
everybody's doing that,
It would be a very different world.
Yeah. And on that, just one last question from me. Do you guys think that consciousness is universal in nature? Meaning that, you got the Big Bang that happened, and you got the cool down that happened, clusters of rocks starting forming, planets and suns, and that's all nature. But the consciousness seems to be the next step in the evolution of the universe, because we're conscious. These things seem to be conscious as well, whatever these entities are. And it might be something that is universal, that the universe itself is conscious through these minute little groups of different species. And they're just trying to elevate us to what we should be at to match up with what's already out there. So that's just a theory. But Louis, do you think this is possible?
I do think everything, it's like the Planck scale, the consciousness. Look at quantum physics and quantum mechanics. Nothing is anything unless it's observed or unless it has a purpose, a reason to be. And the Big Bang and consciousness to me is a chicken and the egg. You don't have one without the other. Okay, the Big Bang, it's a scientific explanation of how the universe started. Who made the Big Bang or said, let it be? It doesn't refute God in my mind at all. I think we get so wrapped up in that it doesn't conform to what we think. Therefore, we throw the whole thing out. Like Michael said, you throw the baby out and the bathwater. Like we need to really just
A lot of kids died that way.
suspend judgment. Jacques Vallée told us that. We said, Jacques, you're like 80. What do you want to tell the world? And he goes, suspend judgment. Like, don't be so big on yourself. Get rid of your ego, So, but to answer the question, I do believe consciousness is in everything. The only difference between potential energy and matter is consciousness, and quantum mechanics and quantum physics is proving that now. So
Right.
I think it is in everything.
Yes, I agree. I will just say this. I wrote a sermon that I'll do a couple weeks from now called "What Does It Mean to Be Sentient?" And, you know, Aboriginal peoples, First Nations peoples here on our continent, Aboriginal peoples, uh, Viking, I mean, they knew that creation was sacred, and they knew that even the very stones had a consciousness, that the earth was consciousness, that the trees, that the plants were all conscious, and we know that now. They just were saying it in their way, and to the Eurocentric Western notion, it was so unscientific. A lot of the things that Western science is discovering, our ancestors already knew. They
Nice.
already knew.
Yeah.
And so I think we need, so when people talk about new age or what have you, I say there's no such thing as new age. There's new wisdom being rediscovered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Math was
so,
always
yeah,
there. We just figured it out. You know, physics have always been
yeah.
there.
Yeah, well, you
We didn't
know, and
invent
we thought these people were crazy. What are you talking about? The trees and the rock people and
Yeah.
the stone nations and whatever. But they were trying to say that um, there was a sacred energy in all things because we all come from that source. So there's an intelligence.
Yeah. It's
We,
entanglement. We come
yeah,
from the
yeah,
Big Bang. Everything is therefore entangled because of it. It was one, and now it is many, but we are still connected on some level that we don't quite understand.
Yeah, because they keep talking about how the universe will eventually just die out, will fade out, all the suns will stop burning and
Yeah.
it'll just go cold. But I'm like, that's not it. What about all the consciousness that's been created from that? The consciousness is the next evolution in the universe. It's the next step. It's what's supposed to happen. And we're just now at the infancy of our awareness and being able to treat each other with somewhat moderate,
yeah,
respect. And you look at everything that's taken place to lead us to this point. I mean, we are in 2023 talking on Zoom. That's amazing. Like, it would take us months to travel to you, Michael, and talk to you back, even 56, well, not 50, but let's say 60 to 100 years ago. Like, it would take
yes,
forever, and here we are able to do it.
yes,
And that is creating connections between people that have never happened before, and making us realize the world's a lot smaller. And maybe, every time somebody's being a douchebag, somebody's recording them now and posting them on TikTok or Facebook. So,
yes,
I mean, everybody's exposed for the bad things that they do, which sort of forces us to be good in public, because you never know when you're going to be recorded. Right.
right.
But yeah, I think personally, consciousness is really cool, and it's got some sort of part to play in all of this for sure. Michael, where can we find your books, sir?
If you go to Amazon.com, all 5 books are there. You can go to Barnes and Nobles, and you can find all the books there. You can reach me at michaeljscarter@gmail.com. You can email me. I don't use my website much, but it is michaeljscarter.com. And you can reach me that way. Facebook. I have a Facebook fan page and I have a regular page, but I answer everything there. So those are the ways you can get in touch with me.
Nice. Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, I just want to extend a warm thanks for sitting with us in our virtual living room here, and
I
many
love it.
thousands of people that listen to our show and watch our videos. We do really appreciate it. It's difficult to find people that have an educated opinion, and you've gone through, formal theologic
Yes,
training, but you've adapted your mindset, your beliefs. You've become universally minded, and I think we all need to be a little more that way, a
yes,
little less rigid. Just because you were told a story 90 years ago, or 20 years ago, if you're young, it doesn't mean it's meant to be taken word for word, fact for fact. There are
yes,
important points, but don't have your blinders on, because you're always being enlightened. And as you
yes.
grow, you can absorb more. So don't limit yourself to just what your Bible of doctrine said. It's
That's right.
that and much more. And it's just to try to help you get that understanding. So thank you for breaking that down in a logical way that everybody can understand. And thank you so much for being our guest. We'd love to have you back sometime.
Oh, listen, anytime, anytime, anytime. If you
Awesome.
need me to fill in or something, if I can do it, you call me.
Well, we appreciate
I've
that.
been,
And we
I've
will call you
enjoyed
on
it.
that. But not that we need you to fill in, just that we want to have you back. We're
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
booked, but we
anytime.
want you back. So
Yeah.
I want to,
Even
and I
on
want to come
panels and
back.
stuff, would be great guests to come
absolutely.
on for panels. Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let me know. Hey guys, oh, so will you send me a link when this comes out?
Absolutely.
For
Yep.
sure.
We're going to wrap our show right now. It'll be out
Okay.
this evening, and we'll distribute it on all our pages. For those of you who don't know all of our pages, we are on YouTube. It's a fairly new channel, 7 months we started. So please subscribe if you haven't already.
Please and thank
Spotify,
you.
as always, we're now posting video on Spotify. So if you like the audio only, that's still there. If you do want to see the video and you prefer Spotify, that's now all of our episodes are that way, and also Apple Podcasts. And you can also check us out at uapstudiespodcast.com. Reverend Michael Carter, thank you so much for being here, man. We have love for you. We feel brotherly love.
Yes.
And you made our day. So thanks very much. And thanks from all of our fans, I'm sure.
Shout out again, brother. Give me a call. Be safe, both of you.
Perfect. Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
Are you paying attention?